giving advice to our former NQT or ECT selves. As always, tune in and talk it out, and I am
Live
live.
from London, this is the Sunday Lunch with Kalil Rouse on Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live on the Podbean app or desktop player. Just head over to www.podbean.com/LSW/TT Radio or search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TT Radio.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. Let me know, please, in the chat really quickly if I can be heard loud and clear. Just do a quick sound check. Let me know if you're in the conversation with a quick message in the chat, just so I don't feel loud, just so I don't feel alone in this space, sat in a little room in my flat on this Sunday afternoon. As always, I am back. This is my new slot on the Sunday Lunch Show. Thank you to those that are just kind of tuning in. Thank you very much for saying that the sound is all good. As I said in the intro, if you just missed it, in today's show, the plan is to discuss the features of the best and worst SLT that we've worked with. And obviously, we're not going to name any names. We're not going to talk about schools in particular, just the characteristics and features. And if you're not a teacher, SLT stands for the Senior Leadership Team. So they're the people that run the school, essentially the leaders, from the head teacher to the deputies, to the assistant principals, to the associate assistant principals. And I think there's another layer, but they started bringing in a whole bunch of different layers to SLT. But I know the one I found the most strange was the associate assistant principal. I don't know if they've ever gone any kind of down another tier, but that's the SLT. So we're going to talk about the features of a great SLT and the flip side, of course, a not so great SLT. And then later on, we're going to go back in time and we're going to talk to our former NQT. And so that stands for kind of newly qualified teacher, or ECT, which is like an early careers teacher. We're going to go back in time and I'm going to ask you to talk to yourself and say the advice you wish you had been given. Because I think when after the years of you do your training for a couple of years and you go into the full swing and you realize that there are certain aspects of the profession that you wish you'd been told about, or maybe if you'd given some like kind of candid advice during the training program the first couple years. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I've got some people entering. So thank you very much, people coming in. Sophia straight in. The associate head teacher. Never heard of an associate head teacher. I've heard of an associate assistant principal. An associate head teacher seems like a way to not pay full TLR and salary. Agreed. I've never heard of an associate head teacher. They always put this word associate in front of things to make it fit, make the person feel like they're at the table when really maybe they're not at the table. And like you said, Sobi, the cynical view is it means they don't have to pay them the same wage as the kind of assistant principals because you're just an associate. I think, again, I always talk about this former school, this kind of, the secret former school that did a lot of things that are worth talking about. They promoted people from, I don't know what role they had before, but they made them associate assistant principals. Their role never changed. They did the same thing in school, but they were given a new title. And I always found it a little bit strange. And maybe it was me, like I said, being a bit cynical about it. But I thought it was the opposite. I thought it was a way to get them more money without actually increasing their job responsibilities. That's my cynical view on it. But who knows? Thank you, people. No assistant head. Oh, I see. Assistant head. I made a mistake. Thank you, everyone that's joining in. So like I said, I might run the intro one more time. So I've got people coming in. And I like to do my intro when I've got more people coming in. And we're going to get into the grips of today's show.
Live from London, this is the Sunday Lunch with Kalil Rouse on Teachers Talk Radio.
Good afternoon for the second time. As I said, the time is now just gone 1 p.m. on Saturday, the 23rd of May, and you're tuned into the Sunday Lunch Show with yours truly, Kalil Rouse, on Teachers Talk Radio. In today's show, we'll be discussing the features of the best and worst SLT you've worked with. In addition, we'll be going back in time and talking to our former NQT and ECT selves. Tune in and talk it out.
Live from London, this is the Sunday Lunch with Kalil Rouse on Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live on the Podbean app or desktop player. Just head over to www.podbean.com/LSW/TT Radio or search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TT Radio.
Thank you very much. I've just had a comment from Aaron in the chat. Maybe I said the wrong day. I don't know what day I even said. Maybe I said Saturday. I don't know what I said. But it's Sunday the 23rd of May. Maybe I said March. I've done that before. So like I said, this show is just going to be, well, not just me. Hopefully, I'm going to get some callers at some point. But this is I've got no scheduled guest today. It's just me and you guys. So at any point, as always, if you're enjoying the show, share it with your friends, share it with family, share it with relatives, whatever you want to do, get more people involved. As I said, the first part of this show is going to be talking about the features of the best and worst SLT we've worked with. For me, just before we start, I've had a bit of let me know how your weekend's been. We've got one more week to go, teachers, until we break up for half term. What are any highlights this week? Let me know in the chat. Let's have some positivity this Sunday lunchtime. Think back over your working week. Maybe you're not a teacher. Maybe you're listening as just a kind of professional in another field. Talk about highlights. What are we grateful for this week? Because we've got 1 week to go until the half term. Be good to, like I said, to share some positivity. Me personally, my little boy, my son, turned 1. He turned 1 he turned 1 on Friday, just gone. So that's what I'm really grateful for. We had a kind of little COVID compliant shindig, so that was good. And then, like I said, so he has no idea what's going on, but he's 1 year old, and it's crazy how time has flown. So, like I said, what are we thankful for? Let me know what's happened this week. Anything groundbreaking? Any positivity? Any news? I want to share some more positive vibes. Mine is my son turned 1. So now I've got a fully fledged 1-year-old. I call him a toddler because he can walk. I've got a fully fledged toddler, normally in great spirits, sometimes a little bit of a moan, but it's all right. That's what babies are like. So let me know. Like I said, the aim of this show, we're going to get into it. I don't like hanging around. We're going to talk about the qualities of the best and worst SLT we have worked with. And the reason why I went for this, I may be able to explain, maybe in my next week's show, I'll explain why I went for this topic. But I did send a tweet out as always. And that's the thing with my Twitter account. I haven't got that many followers. I'm not known on the kind of Twitter sphere. So I sent a tweet out. I'm always a bit worried when I send a tweet out, when I'm asking for responses, because I don't want the tumbleweed. And I thought I was going to get a bit of tumbleweed, but I managed to get a couple of responses. So like I said, I sent a tweet out and I just said to people, what are the features of the best and worst SLT you have worked with? So you guys, if you're listening live, let me know in the chat. If you're listening live, let me know. What are the features of the best or worst SLT you have worked with? What is it that made them great? What is it that made them not so great? That's what I want to know from you guys. Let's get some interactions going this Sunday afternoon. Senior leaders run the school. We know senior leaders can, if they're good at their job, they can lead an outstanding school. We also know that there are some senior leaders that maybe aren't as efficient at running a school, or maybe do not carry themselves in the way that people feel they're supposed to. They've got a hard job. Let me not even deny it. Senior leaders have a hard job. They're always being scrutinized in the public eye, in the staff's eye, if that makes any sense, and obviously students as well. It's a difficult job. But I know there are a lot of senior leaders out there that do it very, very well. And I also know there's a lot of senior leaders out there that don't. And it'll be interesting to get your thoughts. Let me know in the chat. If you are in the Podbean app, or if you're listening via another means, maybe you're listening via a desktop. I don't know if I'm streaming today. If we are streaming, maybe you're listening live through Twitter. Let me know through Twitter. You can do at TT Radio 2021, or you can at me specifically at Kalil_R91. Let me know the features of the best and worst SLT you have worked under. Sobi says yes to streaming. So it looks like I am streaming live. That's always fun and games. So if you are listening via something other than the Podbean app, get at me or get at the Teachers Talk Radio on Twitter. So the first kind of responses I got from people, I think I like GIFs on Twitter. And I think I found a little GIF of a cat. Don't ask why I chose a cat. There was a cat that kind of sees an issue, then hides behind the door and goes away. And the reason I said this is, again, in the previous school, we had a lot of SLT who the impression that we had of them was that they weren't really that visible. They weren't really around. Their office was in a kind of corner of the school where no one really went, and they seemed like they spent most of their days hiding away in their office. So let me know if you've had a similar experience in the past. Maybe it's improved, but I know, like I said, in a previous school, a lot of SLT or some key SLT members used to be renowned for hiding away in their offices and not really being that visible. Because as far as I'm concerned, if you're a senior leader, I should see you out and about as much as possible. That means, I think it was Kyle, one of our fellow hosts, said in one of the in the comments on Twitter, he wrote, and he is at KTG_1990. He said visibility. He's asking the question, are they on the corridors for transition supporting staff? Are their offices central and accessible, or are they hidden away? He's asking, do they pop in for casual chats with staff? And do they do regular walkthroughs to support rather than critique? These are kind of questions. And I assume he's saying, if the answers to these are yes, then that's a good sign of an SLT that's essentially on job, as we'd say. So they seem to be wanting to be active and involved in the school on a daily basis, not hiding away. I think for me, I've seen the difference between transitions. Maybe let me know in the chat if you're the same. There's a massive difference between transitions when there's an SLT presence, teacher presence, but definitely SLT presence, and when there's not. And transitions can be transformed into something completely different, but depending on whether SLT are out there. So let me know if that's something that you've noticed in your own practice. How much of a difference does SLT visibility make in your school? Are they visible? Are they out and about? Or do you not really see them on transitions? Carl's also asking, are the offices central, accessible, or are the offices hidden away? I know at the moment in my previous school, we had a big open, it was a big open atrium in the middle, and a lot of SLT offices were on the atrium. So when that was the kind of place where kids used to congregate at break times and lunch times indoors, and all the SLT offices were there. So they could step out and they're in the thick of it. And that was really powerful. It meant that they could, if there was any issues, they could be out nice and quickly and promptly, or better yet, they were already there and could deal with it again very quickly and promptly. So as I can see, loads and loads of people entering, so thank you for joining. As I was saying, we are currently discussing the features of the best and worst SLT you've worked with. We're not naming names, no slander in here. Just tell me the features. What is it that made them great? What is it that made them not so great? Because I see a lot of messages popping up in the chat now, which is wonderful. I'm going to get to them in a moment. I'm also looking at my Twitter. Things seem to be, oh, no, things aren't popping off. It's just Teachers Talk Radio retweeting my tweets. That was me thinking I got some people tweeting me. It wasn't. It was just TT Radio retweeting me. So thanks for that. But you got my hopes up. One of these days, when I get a big old Twitter following, I'm going to have my notifications popping off, I hope. So hopefully I've rambled on enough to get some feedback in the chat. So first little bit from Sobia. Sobia said, they allow you to make mistakes and have a good sense of humor. I think that's important. You don't want to ever feel like on tenterhooks or on edge that if you make a mistake, it could be your neck on the line. And I think SLT that are there, they're there to support and to challenge. I think those are two things for me. SLT's primary roles are to support and to challenge. And surely support comes first. Let me know if you agree or disagree. But as far as I'm concerned, SLT should obviously lead, but supporting you to make you as successful as possible, and also to challenge you to improve your practice. So Sobia is saying they allow you to make mistakes. We say this to kids all the time. We say to kids, right, mistakes are a learning opportunity. Mistakes are how if you don't fail, you're never gonna make progress, and so on and so forth. So that same ethos that we try to instill in our kids in the learning culture is what we'd expect senior leaders to do with the teachers. So Sobe is saying they allow you to make mistakes and have a good sense of humor, bitter banter. I love SLT that have a bitter banter. I work in a school at the moment with some SLT who have a very, very good sense of humor. It makes working with them a lot more enjoyable. They take, as long as we know they take their job seriously, but we want people to have a good sense of humor, to almost so we know they enjoy being in the building. I've just seen a tweet. Mr. Tom Rogers has said, Mr. Kalil Rouse is discussing good and bad experiences with different SLT teams. I am indeed. So there's a live stream on Teachers Talk Radio. If you're tuning in via Teachers Talk Radio live stream, let me know on Twitter at Kalil_R91, or get yourself on the Podbean app, because then you can interact live through the chat function. But good sense of humor, agreed, definitely. A bit of banter, not taking their job too seriously, because the teaching profession can bog you down. It can bog you down. We want to have leaders with a good sense of humor, agreed. Next one, we have Mr. David Cunningham, again, another fellow host, has said some ideas. He's saying great SLT, listen and empower middle leaders and communicate effectively. I've been a middle leader for yonks now. I don't know how many years. I feel like about 5 or 6, maybe. No, I think about 5. I've been a middle leader. And that whole point of listening to us as middle leaders is really, really important. because a lot of people say that middle leaders are the people that keep the school ticking over. They're like the kind of what do you call these people in the army? Foot soldiers, middle leaders often. They're the ones often first on the scene if there's anything going on, or they have to pick up the issues. And I think we need to feel empowered, we need to feel trusted as middle leaders, and definitely listen to and never talk down to as middle leaders. Let me know in the chat if you're a middle leader, what kind of relationship do you like to have with your SLT? Mr. David Cunningham saying he wants to be, middle leaders need to be listened to and empowered and communicated with. Definitely. We have middle leaders and, of course, kind of non-TLR holding teachers, because I hate saying just teachers. That's nonsense. Teachers without additional responsibilities. Everyone wants to feel listened to and valued. And you need a senior leadership team that opens that dialogue and encourages it day in, day out. That doesn't need to be in a kind of formal setting all the time. It could just be check-ins, walkthroughs, drop-ins. Just being in the staff room. I feel like obviously COVID has changed everything about staff rooms. Staff rooms are not the same as they used to be. I get that. But SLT, popping into the staff room makes a massive difference, I feel. Or maybe there are people that don't want to see SLT in the staff room. Who knows? But for me personally, SLT in the staff room, being able to at least have a conversation about normal things and not just school, sends a good message to staff, I think. So David Cunningham was saying, listen, empower middle leaders, communicate effectively, and that comes through line management meetings, just emails, keeping people in the loop, being proactive, being organized. You need them to set the example. They're the leaders in the school. If they're not communicating effectively and setting the bar high, how could they expect the rest of their staff to do the same? On the flip side, Mr. David Cunningham said, poor communication treats staff with contempt and invisibility. Ghosts. We don't want ghosts out of our SLT. Oh, I nearly said SLT teams, and that, well, I have said it now, and that's awful. I hate saying stuff like that. People, what do people say? They say ATM machines. That bugs me. And PIN numbers. That bugs me as well. Because the ATM is the, oh gosh, what does ATM stand for? Something machine. And I know PIN number is personal identification number. So it always bugs me when people say PIN number and ATM machine. Either way, I digress. So I'm never going to say SLT team again. That's a one-off. So he's saying poor SLT, poor communication, treat staff with contempt. Ouch. I hope no one has ever been treated with contempt. If you had, why not call in, vent? Call in and vent. I've got no scheduled callers today. It's just me and you. Just me and you. So if you want to call in and vent, feel free. You have a chance of winning a TT radio mug if you do. I'll put your name in a hat. I've got a nice little spinner and you get a chance. Probability depends on how many people call in, but at any point, call in the show. We're discussing the best and the worst features of SLT. We move on through the comments. Miss Cato STEM has said, agreed, visibility is very important. Oh, sorry, agreed. Visibility is very important. Let me make sure I read that correctly. And then David Cunningham again is helping me out here. He said, another important one, authenticity. Nothing worse than fake interactions or chats to pretend they have a presence. Ouch. Fake interactions and chats. Authenticity. That's the thing. Not every SLT is a kind of enforcer. Yeah, not every SLT is. That's maybe not their role. There are some SLT whose role it is to be the kind of enforcer, the behavior leads, the people that pick up the kind of the kids that mess about. Some SLT, they're there because they're great at managing and leading adults. Some SLT are there because they're great at managing adults to manage kids. So I think authenticity, knowing what their strengths are and being able to learn and admit. I think when an SLT admits that they've got like a lack of expertise in a certain area, I think that, yeah, shows a lot of integrity and authenticity. All the things we want our kids and ourselves to develop is important, and we want to see it in our leaders, because then that'll filter down to the rest of the school and create a nice, well-rounded culture, of course. So that's what Mr. David Cunningham said. Thank you, Mr. David Cunningham. Then we've got people entering. So everyone that's entering, just to catch you up, we are discussing the best and worst features of the senior leadership teams we have worked with. So we've got a whole bunch of people coming. I'm just going to send a quick message into the chat there so you can see what we're talking about. Again, so we've got Miss Cato STEM said, good SLT members consider how the changes they want to make will impact staff well-being and teacher workload. They must. No one likes an SLT that acts like they've never been a main kind of full timetable teacher before, because you want an SLT that acts with a bit of empathy and realizes that teachers on full timetables do not have a lot of free time. So it's all well and good. You want to set your deadlines, of course. You want to challenge your staff, of course. But it needs to be done in a way that shows you are taking into account their well-being and their workload. You don't want people just piling on deadline after deadline for a full timetable teacher who's got I don't know how many PPAs. This is my ignorance now because I've not been on a full timetable for ages. I don't know how many kind of PPAs staff get when you're on a full timetable. Let me know in the chat. What is a full timetable these days in terms of PPAs? And do PPAs still exist? Or do you still get put on cover? Let me know, because this is a genuine thing, because I feel out of the loop on main scale teachers, and I'm only a middle leader. So we need to make sure our senior leaders are still in the loop on what it means to be a full timetable teacher, because you don't have that much time in your day. And to plan that many lessons takes a lot of time and effort. So you want SLT surely to lead with some empathy, to show they understand how much a teacher's workload actually is. So thank you, Miss Kate Stem. It's a great point, because not just deadlines, but just the actual changes you make, take into account. I think you open forum, get the teachers involved, get their impact, get the kind of impression on how it would impact them. Mr. Tom Hopkins Burke has just put, and when I was talking about, I think I was talking about PIN numbers and ATM machines, and he's just said TTR radio. Agreed. I don't know how many they're gonna come up with. Let me know how many more. TTR radio. I'd never say it. Awful. TTR radio. Teacher Talk Radio. That's what we got at the moment. Miss Cater STEM, let me know that it's called an automated teller machine. I'll take your word for it. I've got no idea. I'll take your word for it. Automated teller machine. And I've just got a bit of guidance from Mr. Tom Hopkins Burke, who's saying that it's 22. They teach 22 out of 25 periods. That is nuts. So you want SLT that take that into account without a doubt. You want an SLT team that takes that into account. Okay, like I said, I had some more. I'm going to go back through the kind of response I got on Twitter. As always, if you'd like to share your thoughts on the best and worst SLT, then call in. It's an open and live talk show. If you're streaming live on Twitter, get yourself on the Podbean app so you can call in. If you're listening on a desktop, thank you very much. Get yourself on the Podbean app. If you're listening back on catch up, thank you for listening back. But next time, get yourself on the Podbean app and call in. So, where was I on a couple? Here we go. We saw one about, where's it gone now? There we go. Someone responded. It was at, I'm going to spell it. It was Etak Nipspa. So Etak Nipsa. If you're listening, Etak, thank you for interacting. On Twitter, this person said that they want a leader who wants to develop, observes, listen, wants everyone to develop. They observe, they listen, they act, they guide rather than tell. That's important. I think SLT are a facilitator. Let me know. So that's the thing. I always imagined it was difficult to be a line manager of a department that you have no expertise in. I find that quite difficult. So SLT, so if you're kind of an SLT, if you've ever been line managed by an SLT member who's not got any expertise in your subject area, let me know what that's like. Because, okay. Wow, Mr. Tom Hopkins, but you were on fire. It's Kate Aspin in reverse, but like not fully in reverse, because if it was fully in reverse, the Nipsa would come first. So the Kate's been reversed and the Aspin's been reversed. You've got good knowledge, my friend. Clearly, you have more connections on the Twitterverse than me. So Kate Aspin, maybe, has said that she wants a leader who wants everyone to develop, observes, listens, acts, guides them, rather than just tells them what to do. Yeah, SLT should make you better at your job. Line management should be a discussion, in my opinion. And again, like I said, being line managed by someone who's not a subject expert can come up with some conflicts. I know in my previous school, again, our head of maths was line managed by someone in SLT who was not a maths expert and used to always give kind of instruction that we looked at as a department and just doesn't work for maths. I'm trying to wrap my brain and think of an example, but it's mainly to do with data and setting. And I think one of the examples was that the SLT member tried to say that certain groups in certain sets could or couldn't do higher. 1 second, I've got a caller. Oh, they've gone. Just had a caller. Call if that's you. Call back in. Sorry, I was about to click invite in and you went. Feel free to call back in. as I was saying, we had a maths department and we were led by an SLT member who was, I think, there was a science specialist. And as you know, obviously in science, you can say quite easily that a lot of schools say, yep, set 1 and set 2, you guys can do triple science. And everyone else combined science, or whatever they call it. I think, yeah, combined science. Correct me if I'm wrong in this. So I think the senior leader tried to do something very cut and dry with maths as well. And that creates a lot of conflicts. When we were trying to imagine in maths, as you know, there's higher and there's foundation. We had kids in maybe set 2 who had better chance of getting a grade 5 on foundation than they did in higher. But the senior leader was saying, nope, 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 nope. If you're in set 1 or 2, you got to do higher. And we're saying, no, listen, that's not how it works in math. They're like, nope, nope, nope. In set 1 or 2, you need to do higher. And then there was a massive conflict with the head of math saying that's just not going to work for some of our kids. There's a lot of kids in set 1 or set 2 or set 3 who would that may have less chance of getting a grade 6 and have more chance of getting a 5 on foundation than they do on higher. And I remember that created some conflicts. So let me know if you ever experienced something similar where you've been led by someone who doesn't actually know much about your subject in terms of specifics. They never taught it. That disconnect can be quite difficult, I imagine. And I imagine it can create some quite interesting conflicts when it comes to being directed by someone that you think doesn't have a clue. So let me know if you've ever been in that situation, because I remember it being, there was a lot of bad mouthing in the staff room, let's say. I was never party to it because I was never at the table. This was a few years back, but I was in the staff room and the SLT member was getting slated. And it was quite toxic to be around, if I'm honest. But that's the kind of thing that happens in schools, unfortunately, sometimes when you have SLT members that don't seem to be considerate of subject-specific needs. You can't just tell a subject you have no idea about what to do, and they're coming back with the expertise and the experience saying, it won't work, we need to do X, Y, Z. And they're saying, nope, it needs to do it my way, and they're not even listening. That's a problem. So let me know if you experience anything like that. Have you ever had an SLT member of staff line managing you who's not got the expertise? Because I think that can create some conflicts. Right, so we had some more comments in the chat. Thank you for those. We had David Cunningham has asked, do you think SLT should engage with staff to gauge staff views more regularly? Staff surveys, so we have a greater understanding of impact from this. In my opinion, yes. My school at the moment is quite good for it. We do staff surveys, oh gosh, how often now? I think about every term, and we have like a staff feedback group as well. Listen, you can send the surveys out, you can offer it, it's not, and you can say you want staff to engage, obviously it's not compulsory, but I think just the fact that you're giving staff a platform shows that you want to listen. It's then about what you do with the information you've been given. It's all well and good having staff surveys, but do you share with us the outcomes of the staff survey, or do you keep it behind closed doors? Because if you get a staff survey and staff, I don't know, we've identified an area of concern or something, I would want a very honest and open SLT to come back and maybe in a briefing to say, right, we have heard you. We've seen from the staff survey that you guys have identified X, Y, Z as being an area for concern. And we've heard it, and this is what we're now going to do about it. That's the missing loop. It's all well and good sending the surveys out, but what are you doing about it? It's just like giving kids an assessment and then not giving them any feedback afterwards. What's the point? Yeah, obviously there is more of a point to giving kids an assessment, but if you don't even tell them how they've done or give any feedback, then it's fairly pointless. So I think definitely staff surveys. Let me know, how many staff surveys do you get in your school at the moment? Have you ever had a staff survey? Do you have a staff feedback group? Do you have any kind of channel through which you as staff members can talk to SLT and explain things that you're unhappy about? Let me know in the comments. Call in, as always. Like I said, I had somebody called in, then they cut off. Maybe it was a butt dial like last time. Who knows? Call in, let me know how you felt. Do you think surveys are worthwhile or are they a waste of time? Let me know. So then Ms. David Cunningham was saying that he knows a non-special SLT. He knows a non-special SLT to look at a subject-specific mock exam with the head of department, and they pass comment link to subject content. That can work, definitely. Definitely. Okay, I have some articles on this as well. Where my articles gone? And I found an article that was talking about, on the positive sides, 5 kind of traits of an effective SLT. People that are just joining, we're about to get into 5 traits of an effective SLT. Let me know if you agree with these, if you've experienced them, or are they just a bit of guff? So I'm going to take a little sip of my water, actually. And on the other side of a bit of a transition, we're going to get into these 5 traits of effective SLT. Right. So, as I was saying, I've now got an article. I've wet my whistle, as they said. I'm feeling energized. So, this article I found on a website called eteach.com, and it's entitled, What are the 5 traits of an effective SLT? So, their first trait that they've put, top number 1, is they share a common purpose. And it goes on to say that these teams successfully lay aside ego. No team member elevates himself above another. They're aware of one another's strengths and areas for development and work successfully with both. The vision is important to all of them, not just the head. They understand the role that they each play individually and collectively in seeing the vision fulfilled. As a result, a shared understanding of their why means that when challenges arise, they never lose their way. Their shared sense of purpose ensures that the right decisions are made for the right reasons. They hold themselves and one another accountable for the outcomes of their collective decisions. Blame is absent from their interactions, but praise and encouragement are never in short supply. As a result, they continually fan the flames that keep their collective purpose and passion alive. Very well written. I wish I'd written it myself. A common purpose. How many SLT? Oh, I nearly said it. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo. How many SLT have you worked with that you think have been a kind of a real team, a real unit, where they've got a common purpose? Where, or if you worked in a kind of school where the SLT, you get the sense there's a bit of animosity under the surface. Has that been your experience before? Let me know in the chat. Call in, it's not a problem. So, because this article is saying they need to be united and no team member needs to be above the other. And I've heard of many a school in the past where there's I can't think of a better word, but there is beef between SLT members, where teachers know that there's some rifts, people aren't happy, and that sets a very bad example. Because as this person, I think the author is called Viv Grant, as Viv Grant has said, we know a kind of effective SLT needs to share a common purpose, and their why needs to be united. That's the first thing. The next thing she's gone on to say is, she said the second kind of trait of an effective SLT is that they learn together. She's gone on to say that successful teams not only work together, they learn together. SLT meetings are not only viewed as opportunities to work on the strategic and operational sides of school life, they're also seen as opportunities to reflect, learn, and grow. Someone's calling in. See if it works this time. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
You are live on Teachers Talk Radio. Introduce yourself.
Yeah. What topics?
What topic? Hello? You there?
Yes, I'm here. I'm from
Oh,
Indonesia.
perfect. Oh, you come from Asia? What? No, it's all right. What part of Asia?
Indonesia. Do you
Woo,
know Indonesia?
I know Indonesia as much as the average person who knows a bit about the world, but I've never been to Indonesia myself. No.
Where are you come from, friend?
Me, I live in the UK, as you can probably tell from my accent. I live in kind of southern England. Yeah, we're going global here. Indonesia to the UK.
Yeah.
Do you work?
But I never go there. And sorry, my English is not good.
No, it's all right. Listen, you've got better English than some people I've spoken to, not on this talk show, but in life. Don't worry about it. I can understand you. But let me just ask you 3 questions. First of all, what is your name, sir? What's your name?
My name is Iyas.
Iyas. Lovely to meet you.
A-U-A-S.
A-U-A. Right. Lovely to meet you, Iyas. Iyas, do you work in education? Are you a teacher of any kind?
I am, my job is stuntman.
You say stuntman?
Yeah, stuntman, entertainer.
A stuntman? Whoa, what? A stuntman entertainer? Oh, my word. So what have you told me through your job? So do you work in movies, films?
Movie, indie movie.
Indie movie?
My channel YouTube.
You've got a YouTube channel?
Yes, I have a channel YouTube. May you add May you subscribe my channel YouTube?
Listen, put it in the. I'm not gonna as much as I would like to publicize. I'm not gonna publicize your YouTube channel. But you can put it in the chat.
Okay.
I can't change that. But one thing I'm gonna ask you. So we're talking about leadership in schools. Do you remember what it was like for you at school? Do you remember how did you feel like your school was very well led when you were at school? Do you remember your head teacher, your principal? Do you remember what they were like?
Oh, sorry, my English is not good. I'm not understand what you say.
Okay, so so when you were at school,
I at school in Indonesia.
Yeah. So what were the teachers like at school?
What did you mean what the lesson I like?
Yeah. What is it? Who's your favorite teacher? Who was your favorite teacher at school?
Teacher. Oh, my favorite teacher is sport.
Who?
Sport teacher.
Sport or your PE teacher?
Sport. I like sport.
Oh, you like
and
sport.
Teacher.
What made them so great?
Mixed martial art. I'm very like mixed martial art.
Nice. What made your sports teacher such a great teacher?
Wushu teacher, my coach.
Yeah. What was good?
And the teacher is same, isn't it?
What was good about him? Yes. You still there? You with me?
Yes.
What was great? What was good about your sports teacher?
Sorry, what you mean?
Your PE teacher. Who was your favorite teacher? Was your sports teacher?
Oh,
what was good? What was good about him?
My favorite teacher is martial art teacher.
Ah, okay.
Sport. I very love sport in my school.
Excellent. What school like it? Just before you go, Iyas, what was school like in Indonesia?
Ordinary school, like
Yeah.
Senior high school, elementary high school.
Mm-hmm.
But
Okay.
I was graduated from mechanical engineering school.
Say again. What you said with mechanical engineering? Say one more time.
Did you mean years when I school there?
Yeah, you said something about mechanical engineering.
Yes, I'm mechanical engineering.
Oh, you did that at university?
No, university. Before university.
Oh,
Senior
before.
high
Wow.
School.
Oh, wow. We definitely in the UK. I don't hear much about people doing mechanical engineering in secondary school.
In Indonesian, when you school in senior high school, you can choose major it, and I choose mechanical engineering.
Ah, a major. Oh, I understand. So more maybe college age. That makes sense. I thought you meant when you're about 15, 16. You mean when you're like 17, 18?
15, 16. And I think you how over there in UK? If don't you have school like me? Mechanical engineering and
at university.
University now, senior high school.
Senior high school, a little bit. In college, I think. Let me know. People in the chat. Clearly, I've forgotten what they're doing. My school only has year 7, year 8. We do. Engineering is definitely something you can do at the age of about. I was about 16, 17, 18. Definitely, you can do some engineering. There are people asking. Listen. You've got some fans in the chat. Yes, they're asking. What's your favorite type of stunt to perform?
I was perform. I ever perform in the a lot of audience. And my coach from Broadway. Do you know Tooth Lester? Tooth Lester?
Who? Say again.
You can search on Google engine. Tooth Lester. He's from Broadway and come in Indonesia to teach us about stuntman water show in.
So do you know when you do stunt stuff? Are you doing like fighting scenes or are you doing?
Yes. Do you know Iko Wise?
Do I know
Iko Wise, actor from Indonesia, The Raid.
No, I've not heard. He's not. Listen, I know a fair few Indonesian actors, but he's not one I'm aware of.
Oh, You don't know. Iko
No,
Uwais.
I'll do some
Actor
googling.
Indonesia. His movies come to box office movies. Hollywood.
He's
The
in.
Raid.
Oh, he's got. Oh, spell it. What? How do you? I
The
might do
Raid.
some googling. I can learn something. What's it? So spell his name one more time.
Yes, and I join his team fight choreo team. Iko Uwais fight choreo team for his movie. The Raid.
But I'm just doing a bit of googling. 1 second. I've just typed in. I've gone onto Google. There we go. I've
Sorry,
literally
my
just
English is not good.
for the listeners. I just typed in Indonesian stunt actor into Google, and up comes Iko Uwais. Iko
Iko
Uwais,
Uwais.
born February the 12th, 1983, is an Indonesian actor, stuntman, fight choreographer, and martial artist.
Maybe you can search my name, Maldalias Usu.
What, in YouTube?
I think on maybe it's not good.
Oh no, it's all right. Listen, ES, listen. All I'm gonna say, it's been an absolute pleasure. I've learned something new from speaking to you. I know we didn't manage to speak much about school and education, but it's been a pleasure speaking to someone. That sounds so desperate. It's been a pleasure speaking to you this Sunday lunchtime. What time is it over there before you go? What time is it?
Over here, 8 o'clock p.m.
8 p.m. So it's evening time. So listen, ES, I hope you have a wonderful evening. It's lunchtime in the UK at the moment. I've learned something new about Indonesian
Lunchtime.
stunt actors. It's lunchtime
Did
for
you
us, yeah.
mean 12 over there? 12 o'clock.
Yeah, it's about
Lunchtime.
It's 1:42 p.m.
Oh, 1:42.
Yeah. Okay,
Oh, sorry,
listen, ES.
sorry, my English is not good. Maybe
No,
you
it's all right.
confused.
Listen, I've understood the vast majority of what you told me. So thank you very
Okay,
much
thank
for
you.
calling in. Hope you have a
very much
wonderful rest.
too.
I hope you have a wonderful
God
rest of
bless
your
you.
evening. Bye, ES. And say hello to Indonesia for me. Bye-bye. I'm going to disconnect you
Bye-bye.
now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, my
Thank
friend.
you. Thank you, Les.
God bless you.
Oh, he said, God bless me. Oh, what a guy. What a guy. What a guy. Going live to Indonesia. So we didn't really speak much about senior leaders and everything else with my mate from Indonesia. But I did learn about Iko Uwais, who is an Indonesian stunt actor. Clearly the most famous one, because when I typed in Indonesian stunt actor, he's the first person that came up. I don't recognize what's he been in? Right, just so some kind of, you might need this for a quiz show in the future. So Iko Uwais, he's best known for starring in the action films Marantau, anyone seen that? The Raid 2, Headshot, Mile 22, The Night Comes for Us, Stuba, and the Netflix series Wu Assassins. Let me know if any of those mean anything to you. Mr. Tom Hopkins Burke has asked whether Tom Rogers can do a live show from Indonesia soon. I hope so. Let's fly him out. Let's go global. Is Indonesia on the green list? Can someone tell me? Because I'm tempted to just we'll go live from Indonesia. Clearly, we've got a following over there. Let's see if we can get this global. But yeah, thank you very much. What we're going to do now, we're going to take a break for the news. And on the back, after the news, we're going to come back and talk about the next segment of the show, which is going back in time and talking to our former NQT or now ECT cells and the advice we wish we'd been given at the time. So we're going to listen to the news. And on the back of that, we're going to go back in time.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News with Megan Goods.
This is your latest Teachers Talk Radio News. The annual date for counting students eligible for pupil premium funding has been moved forward, meaning students who became eligible between October 2020 and January 2021 will have to wait until October 2021 to be counted. Schools face losses of almost £118 million of funding as a result. A survey by the National Association of Head Teachers highlighted that nearly 62% of schools have at least 5 pupils who became eligible between October 2020 and January 2021, and will now not be counted until much later this year. Philip Wright, Director General of Exam Board Representative JCQ, is facing backlash from overworked and overtired teachers following an article published in Schools Week. In the article, Wright said exam boards had been working harder than ever, and their work was simply just not immediately visible. He also appealed to teachers by saying he recognised the enormous responsibility placed on schools and colleges and its implications for teacher workload. Because, far from twiddling our thumbs, we feel it too. The suggested empathy did little to appease teachers, however, who took to Twitter to express their dissatisfaction. Ofsted's annual parent survey has shown that 87% of parents think that their child's school has handled the pandemic well. 7 in 10 parents also said they had received guidance or training from their child's school to help support remote education at home. Around 2/3 of those questioned, however, did state that they were worried about their child's learning loss and mental health. That was your daily education news briefing.
Live from London, this is the Sunday Lunch with Kalil Rouse on Teachers Talk Radio.
Hello, 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 and welcome back. It's the Sunday Lunch with me, Kalil Rouse, on Teachers Talk Radio, and it's the 23rd of May, and it's 1:47. Coming up now, we're going to be going back in time and talking to our former NQT or ECT selves and giving ourselves advice we wish we'd been given. Interact with me, call in if you want, and I am live.
Live from London, this is the Sunday Lunch with Kalil Rouse on Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live on the Podbean app or desktop player. Just head over to www.podbean.com/LSW/TT Radio or search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TT Radio.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for everyone that is in the studio at the moment. If you've just tuned in, you've missed the first part of the show where we're talking about the features of the best and worst SLT we have worked with. We also had a caller live and direct from Indonesia. His name was, Iyas, I believe it was. And he was a stuntman from Indonesia. We spoke nothing about education because I've got the impression he maybe didn't understand what I was asking. But I got the impression that he's maybe does some martial arts and he's a stuntman in some films. I think he's got a YouTube channel. I couldn't really catch the full gist, but I was glad that he called in and took the plunge. If you want to follow in his footsteps, just click that call in button. If you're on the Podbean app, there's a little phone down on the right-hand side. Call in and talk, because this next segment is about going back in time and talking, if we could, going back in time and talking to our former NQT selves when we're just fresh into the classroom, when we're having our mentoring sessions and trying to get our feet under the table and work out what the hell is going on in this kind of crazy world that we call teaching. What advice do you wish you'd been given? Yeah, so that's what I want you guys to do. Into the chat, type in, what advice would you give yourself if you could go back in time? And speak to yourself when you were, I don't know, when I started teaching, I was 21, fresh out of uni. Literally, I left uni in, I don't know what, May of whatever year it was. And then by September, I was standing in front of kids, teaching them as if I were a fully fledged teacher. Crazy. So what advice, if when you were an NQT, what advice would you have wanted your mentor, or what guidance would you have wanted your mentor to have given you to fully prepare you? Because I think teaching is one of those professions where you're never fully prepared. Things crop up as the years go by. But I think there are certain things that you would wish people would have told us when we were in our kind of early years to just make it a little bit easier. I asked this question on Twitter earlier today. So my Twitter handle is at Kalil_R91, and Kalil is spelled Kalil. So feel free to kind of follow me if you're listening live or you're listening back on catch up. When I asked this question on Twitter, I got a couple of responses. One was from, let me try and find it now. Oh, I can't find it. It was Miss Cato Stem was talking about PowerPoints And I think someone else got involved. I think Kyle may have got involved in this conversation as well. And Miss Cato Stem said what she say to herself as an NQT is the inverted commas perfect PowerPoint with all the cool transitions and the GIFs and the subject specific memes is not as important as you think it is. That's what she would have told herself. What would you have told yourself? Because I feel like new teachers think that the aesthetics of your PowerPoint slide is one of the most important thing. And most people spend so much time planning lessons when actually what they're really planning is graphics and animations and transitions. And what they should be focusing on is how animated they actually are in the classroom when they're delivering the content. That's what you should be focusing on as an NQT. Don't worry about your animations, fade in, fade out, swivel in, swivel out. What else can you do? Grow and turn. What are the other animations in PowerPoint? Grow and turn. Let me know in the chat. What are the animations in PowerPoint? Fade in, grow and turn, swivel. You can do some other stuff. But yeah, a lot of NQTs, I think, back in the day used to focus on making sure that it was whiz bang. Everything looked fancy to kind of, I don't know, keep the kids engaged. Maybe that was the thought process. Luckily for me, the school I first worked at in the maths department, we didn't use PowerPoint because PowerPoint isn't really that suitable to teach in maths. We use something called Active Studio, Active Inspire. So that meant I never really got sidetracked in the wonderful world that is PowerPoint animations and transitions. I was able to focus on just getting the resources right and the proper pedagogy and the proper teaching rather than thinking, right, let me make this bit flying from the right and this bit come down from the top. So I think a lot of NQTs want to make sure that their PowerPoint looks great just in case someone came in the room and, I don't know, maybe their fear was that someone would think they didn't put enough time into their planning because their PowerPoint looks shoddy. Nonsense. But definitely that's a trap NQTs fall in. Definitely that's a trap NQTs fall in. So as I said, what would you tell yourself if you went back in time and spoke to your former NQT self? Sobia said in the chat, she said, if you find a good school, stay for as long as you can. I think that's quite powerful. There's nothing wrong with staying at a school if you feel like it's right for you. And obviously schools being right for you, that takes on different meanings. That could mean that you feel well supported. It could mean that you feel like there's room for progression. It could just be that you enjoy the kids and the interactions. You feel like you're honing your craft. There is no pressure on you to bounce around and change schools. If the school is a good school, stay with it. Stick with it until maybe you get to a point where you feel, right, I need a new challenge or I need to make a step up, but maybe the area you want to step up into is saturated in your school. Maybe. But I think Sobia's got some good advice that she'd give to herself. Sobia, just asking, is that because you actually moved on as an NQT? Let me know. So is that something you actually would ask you would tell yourself because in actual fact, do you think you moved on too quickly? Let me know in the chat. Sobia, let me know. Then also we got, this is Ilyas is saying a good school is study from nature. Very powerful. Yeah, good school is kind of what I think you're saying there is a good school takes into account the wider society and development of kids, taking into account their community where they live and human nature as well. And we learn about human nature and we build kids to be upstanding citizens, not just robots that know, I don't know, the real core aspects of maths as opposed to personality skills and interactions, everything else. So thank you very much, Ilyas. Mr. Tom Hopkins Burke has said that the one animation I would recommend is using a circle with a wheel animation. Acts a good 2 minute, 5 minute, or 10-minute timer. Interesting. I've got no idea what we're talking about. You can tell me and PowerPoint don't really get along, or PowerPoint and I, whichever way around it's supposed to be. The circle with a wheel animation. So I see what you mean. So you can see the wheel going round, and then that's can be your timer. Recommend. Fair enough. I'm not really that au fait with PowerPoints these days. I don't use PowerPoints that much. Again, so let me know, what other advice would you give yourself if you went back in time as went back to NQT self? We had the person on Twitter again, so I believe this is Kate Aspin was interacting with me. She said she would tell herself that education is cumulative. Don't panic if a lesson goes wrong. NQTs love to catastrophize. I think I responded on Twitter to this very thing, saying that NQTs love to catastrophize. And I think it's all born out of the fact that you put so much effort and passion into, inverted commas, planning your lesson or your lesson resources. And then if it doesn't go to plan, which often happens in the world of teaching, it's the end of the world. And it's not. even 10 years down the line, lessons don't go to plan. And every poor lesson, in your opinion, or lesson that didn't go to plan, is a learning opportunity, and an opportunity for progress. I stand by that 100%. Stand by that 100%. So if you're an NQT listening or an early careers teacher listening, learn from every single lesson. If a lesson went well, learn how, think and reflect on how you could have done it better. If the lesson didn't go as planned, then learn and reflect. Ask yourself, what didn't go well? If the kids messed about, was that because the kids felt like messing about, or do you think there was something lacking in your actual delivery of the content? Did you engage them? All those questions, I think you need to be really candid and honest with yourself as an NQT, and not putting all the blame on yourself, not catastrophizing, not being downbeat about it, but using everything as an opportunity to learn and progress. That is a very important piece of advice. So those you join in, like I said, just seeing some more people enter the studio, what advice would you give yourself as an NQT? So if you went back in time and you could speak to yourself as an NQT, what would you tell yourself? I'll just put that in the chat. As always, I've found an article. I love an article because it means I've got more to feed off. There's someone on Twitter that I interact with quite a lot. His name is Mike Thane. I believe on Twitter he is at Thane Mike. He actually wrote a blog on this very topic, and it was entitled, "What Advice Would I Give My Younger Self?" And like I said, so Mike Thane has written a bit of a blog, and I spoke to him, tried to get him on the show, but he's got some daddy duties, not able to come on. So in his blog, here are his thoughts. And if you agree, disagree, everything else, let me know in the chat. His first one is about establish really strong routines right from day one. Don't take any nonsense. Don't give an inch. Be relentlessly consistent. That's his first one. I always find it's an interesting one because people always speak about routines. Get your routines, get your routines. But it's often, you don't always hear what the routines actually are in their kind of specific sense. But I think this is something that I would have told myself growing up as an NQT, because I was 21 coming out of university, going into secondary school teaching. I think I remember my kind of, whether it was a conscious aim or maybe not, I ended up becoming not too friendly, but I ended up being quite friendly with the kids. I was a kind of young, cool teacher. Yeah, Mr. Rouse, he's the one who's kind of in touch with us, but not really, because he's still a teacher. And I think I definitely used that to my advantage at certain times, but I think it also was it caused me a few issues. I think when I was trying to it's difficult to get class back on side, or to get them to focus and take the lesson seriously, if they only see you as a kind of jovial, friendly teacher who's not trying to be their mate, but isn't the disciplinarian. I wasn't the disciplinarian from day one. I think my first bit was I want to just get the kids on side, I think I phrased it as build the relationships, which is important. But I think when you first start out, yes, relationships are important, but you need to also make sure they respect you as a classroom practitioner, and they respect you in terms of being the person that manages the room. That is also important. And that's something that I don't think I gave as much notice of, or paid as much homage to at the time when I was growing up and learning my craft. Yeah, so I think if you're an NQT in a school that's got a behavior policy, that's useful. And if it's got routines that every classroom has to follow, that helps, because then it's not about establishing your own routines. I think NQTs find that very difficult, to have the pressure of establishing their own routine, whereas being in a school where have routines set for you, that's easier. So that's what Mr. Mike Thane was saying as one advice he'd give himself. He'd say, establish some strong routines right from day one. Don't give an inch. Who remembers that? No smiles before Christmas? Is that a thing? I think it was no smiling before Christmas. I remember hearing that when I first started out. Let me know if I'm talking nonsense. I believe that was a thing where it was it's kind of like a throwaway phrase that people used to say, to basically say to NQTs and teachers that this first term, you got to get your routines and your discipline in check. So don't smile. And I used to always hear it and think that's a bunch of nonsense. But there is some truth in it. And I don't think it's as extreme as saying you can't be happy and you can't interact with kids before Christmas. That's nonsense. But I think there is some benefit in getting that first term expectations set. And I don't think I did that as an NQT. Let me know what you were like as an NQT. Were you a smiley NQT between October, September, and Christmas? Or were you no smiles before Christmas, because let me know if it was effective or not. People coming into studio, thank you very much for joining. We are talking about the advice we'd give our former NQT or ECT selves if we could go back in time. Next, Mr. Mike Thame was talking about shouting less, pausing more. Give students time to think and process. I know, and even now, obviously in a talk show, I'm feeling the silence, but I remember when I was an NQT and an ECT, an early careers teacher, silence was a bit unnerving for me. When you would, I don't know, ask a question to a kid and they wouldn't answer, I'm learning now more so than ever to just wait, to just wait and give them some time to think, because silence is powerful. Silence is very, very powerful, and it means you're respecting the child's thinking time. And I remember when I was first teaching, I used to always feel the silence. So I'd ask the kid a question and I'd wait for a little bit. Then I'd give him a prompt straight away and I wait. Oh, then I'll give him a prompt again. I used to always do that. And I would have told myself to pause more. Give students more time to think and process. Silence is fine. Silence is fine. I think one thing I also would have said to myself is be more economical with your language, slow down. Yeah, there's a lot of power to have from silence, taking your time. People that are joining in the chat, if you're a teacher, we are talking about the advice you give yourself if you went back in time and spoke to your younger NQT or ECT self. That's what we're talking about at the moment. I found another article on TES. This is way back. This is from 2015. And this guy's called it 30 Snippets of Advice I'd Give My NQT Self. On the other side of this transition, I'm going to get into this person's 30 tips. Chance of getting through all 30, very, very slim. Call in at any point if you want to share your own advice that you give yourself if you went back in time. As I said, no scheduled call of this today. It's just me and you guys. People listening back, if you're on catch up, thank you very much. If you're streaming live from Twitter, interact via Twitter using @TT Radio2021 or @Kalil_R91. What advice would you give yourself if you went back in time and spoke to your former NQT, newly qualified teacher, or ECT self? I've got some familiar names coming into the chat. I always pester my kind of previous guests and say, right, come in. I always have a fear that maybe I'm going to have a show where I just talk to myself and no one comes in. I've always got that fear because I've not got the biggest Twitter following. I'm relying on my own kind of charisma and character to kind of lure you guys in and keep you here. So the question I'm asking in the chat, interact with me, let me know, call in, type in the chat. What advice would you give yourself if you went back in time and spoke to your former NQT self? What did you need someone to tell you that would have been like, I wish I'd known that at the time, and then maybe I wouldn't have stressed out so much? So I found an article, and like I said, it's on TES, and it's back from 2015. And this guy, I can't remember what's his name. His name is, patriarchy. It's not even a man. It's a woman called Kelly Leonard. I apologize. Kelly Leonard in 2015. The first point that she's made is pace yourself. Sorry, I've just started laughing because Mr. Action Hero Teacher has put a bit of nonsense in the chat about get a good pair of plimsolls. From NQT, we're not going to talk about plimsolls again, Mr. Carl Poupe, but feel free, Carl, to call in because I think you could have some words of wisdom here about what advice you'd give yourself if you went back in time and spoke to your former NQT self. What did you need to hear? First one, this person said in an article is pace yourself. The best analogy is that teaching is a marathon, not a sprint. That is without a doubt. I feel like when you're an NQT, you feel like there's pressure to just be great quickly. Pace yourself. You're not going to be, face facts, you're not going to be an inverted commas outstanding teacher within 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. Not a chance. So take your time. Focus on important things, high leverage things, and take your time. Yeah, don't get downbeat if things don't go so well because the learning journey is far from linear. Next one, this person said in their article, is build relationships. Something I was speaking about a little bit earlier. I actually did a show on building relationships a while ago. You can listen back to that show on ttradio.org/listen back. Just search Kalil Rouse and you'll find the show way back I did on building positive relationships. So this person, Kelly, said, teaching is person-centered. Building good working relationships with students, parents, and staff is vital. But what they're basically saying is, even as an NQT, spend some time building positive relationships. There's no point finishing the day of work and going straight and burying your head in all your kind of marking and things. Maybe genuinely time spent making some positive phone calls could have a better impact on your classroom culture than going and planning your extra animations in your PowerPoint. Genuinely, so build relationships with fellow staff, the parents definitely, and also, of course, the kids. One thing that I'd also say, I think I was very passionate as an NQT, but I've seen some NQTs and in my previous school and everything else that they don't seem passionate about what they teach. I think they want to put up a persona. Maybe they're not comfortable yet. They put up a persona of being quite stoic, I think is a word maybe I'd use, or they maybe put their guard up a little bit. They're afraid of being more vibrant in the classroom because maybe they feel like that they might create the wrong atmosphere. Passion in your teaching is vital. How do you expect kids to be interested in learning about, I don't know, forces in science if you're not going to make it seem like forces in science is the most interesting thing they're going to learn today? I think I walked past, I think in my school they're learning about rocks, sedimentary, igneous, metamorphic. This is my knowledge coming to the fore now. Magma, lava. I'm just thinking of all the buzzwords that I heard. And I walked past a teacher, and the teacher was talking about metamorphic rocks in a way that made them sound like they were so incredible. And the kids were like, oh, so what? Rocks can kind of change state. And the teacher's like, yeah. So a metamorphic rock is one that kind of changes. This is where my science knowledge is going to slack. Changes state from being one type of rock to then being another type of rock. Any scientist, let me know if I just talked a whole bunch of nonsense. But the teacher was delivering it in a way that was passionate. I think one thing I'd tell any NQT and ECT, be passionate about what you teach, deliver it in a way that makes it seem like it is the most interesting thing the kid's going to learn. Because if you're not going to convey that, how do you expect them to be engaged in the lesson? So spark an interest with students. You need to be excited about what you're teaching, and that will rub off on them. I guarantee it. You'll ignite their curiosity through your demonstration of, I don't know, just how wonderful science or geography or art or everything else actually is. Someone said, yes, science. So Mr. Carl Poupe is responding in the chat, and he said, on a serious note, do what you can. The job can be emotionally draining, and it's easy to get caught up with individual students' unfortunate circumstances. You have to learn to look after yourself so that you can look after others. You can't pour from an empty cup. Staff well-being, 100%. 100%. NQTs, the amount of times when I did teach first, I used to hear about NQTs and ECTs, and I was going to use another acronym just to be silly, but how long they just stay late at night. They'll be going to bed at 11, 12, planning. And they'll be shattered by morning, shattered. And how are you going to teach? Like Carl said, you can't pour from an empty cup. You need to prioritize your well-being. You do as much as you can. But one thing that I always used to do as an NQT, and you need to take time, plan what you're going to say, plan what you're going to do, plan what the kids are going to be doing. Less about the whiz bang and the PowerPoints, less about the fancy resources and the card sorts and everything else that people do, thinking that that's outstanding lessons. Nonsense, in my opinion. Plan what the kids are going to be doing in every part of the lesson. Those are the transitions you want to focus on. We don't need to focus on transitions between PowerPoint slides. That's an addition. But if you haven't got the learning transitions, then you're not going to get your kids on the right journey. Yeah, because every lesson is a journey from what they enter the room knowing to hopefully leaving the room knowing more. That's your job. So focus on how you're going to take them on that journey. So thank you, Carl. And then Sober said, yes, science. Listen, so I think Sober's a science teacher. We've got some other people in the room that are science teachers. People joining, thank you very much. Please kind of interact with me. We're talking about what we'd say to our former selves if we went back in time. We get on to, I'm reading an article, point number 5. It's saying, lose the need to be a perfectionist. Lose it. Get gone. Get rid of it. If you want to be a perfectionist, then I'll tell you now, teaching may not be the profession for you. because you can try and work and stay up as late as you want, but there'll always be more to do. Always. So lose the need to be a perfectionist. NQTs, if you're out there, ECTs, if you're out there, listen to me when I'm speaking. Lose the need to be a perfectionist. You will never, this person says, you will never achieve perfection in teaching because there are too many extrinsic factors that influence the outcomes. Learn to embrace perfection. It can be quite beautiful. That's what Kelly has said in her TES article. Lose the need to be a perfectionist. I wish more mentors said this to NQTs rather than allowing them to kind of hide themselves away, bury their heads in like books and PowerPoints and resources to the point where they keep trying to tweak to make it better and better and better. And they're spending their time on things that aren't going to have the highest leverage. Next, they've said, this is difficult as an NQT, but it says, have a finish time and stick to it. Have a finish time. This person says, to survive in teaching, you need to know when to call it a day. The teachers who tend to burn out are those that can't stop working. Give yourself a set period to do work. What's not done at the end just gets left for another day. I think I've said this so many times in previous shows. Quick plug. I've done a few shows. If you're listening into Teachers Talk Radio for the first time, my name's Kalil Rouse. I've done a few Teachers Talk Radio shows, and you can listen back via the Podbean app as you are at the moment. You can listen back on Spotify. You can go onto ttradio.org/listen back. You can listen to myself and other wonderful shows. Wonderful shows. But I've done a show in the past about staff well-being, and I think work-life balance, all that stuff, very, very important. And we need to get our NQTs to take that as much as possible. Value their work-life balance from the outset as much as possible. Listen, I know there are demands on NQTs and ECTs and everything else, essays and deadlines and commitments outside of what they need to do in the classroom. But as much as possible, try to have a finish time and stick to it. Next, this person said, have a life outside of school. Have a life outside of school. We're all talking about this enrichment nowadays in the news. We're talking about enrichment a lot and making sure kids have things to do outside of just being in the classroom. Same for teachers. So if you can go back in time, I'd say the same thing. I definitely did that as an NQT or an ECT. I definitely made sure I was still playing my football. I was still meeting up with friends, everything else. I think it's important. People joining, if you are a teacher, what we're talking about at the moment is advice you would give yourself if you could go back in time and speak to your former NQT self. So let me know, like I said, let me know in the chat, what advice would you give yourself if you could go back in time and speak to yourself? As always, call in. There's a little grey phone if you're listening through the Podbean app. There's a little grey phone at the bottom. Call in at any time. Just have a conversation with me. I've had one caller already today from Indonesia. I wonder if there's anyone else listening from far and wide around the globe. I'm in the UK, if you can't tell. So it'd be interesting to hear any caller from around the world. I know TT Radio. I just said TT Radio, not TTR Radio. I know TT Radio goes global. So it'd be great to hear from some listeners far and wide. What we're going to do, the time is nearly 2:15. We're going to take a quick break for the news. And on the other side, I might be talking, actually, there's some recent things I've seen in the news about these longer school days and everything else that I can't wait. I feel like I'll be doing myself a disservice, not really explaining my thoughts on all this longer school day stuff that I'm seeing on Twitter at the moment. So we're going to run the news. And after that, we're going to do a little bit more on going back in time. And then we're going to talk about current affairs on this longer school day proposal.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News with Megan Goods.
This is your latest Teachers Talk Radio News. The annual date for counting students eligible for pupil premium funding has been moved forward, meaning students who became eligible between October 2020 and January 2021 will have to wait until October 2021 to be counted. Schools face losses of almost £118 million of funding as a result. A survey by the National Association of Head Teachers highlighted that nearly 62% of schools have at least 5 pupils who became eligible between October 2020 and January 2021, and will now not be counted until much later this year.
My back. Let me know. My back. Something's just happened there. Let me know in the chat really quickly because I somehow the window closed. I think I'm still alive. Right, cool. What did happen? Let me know what it sounded. Did the show end? Because somehow I managed to go back. The window just shut. So it's not too bad. We are back. It's not a problem. So thank you, David Cunningham. So that was the news. I cut the news short by accident because something happened in my kind of Podbean window. But this next kind of final 14 or so minutes, I heard a couple other of my co-hosts. Okay, cool. A couple other of my co-hosts talking about it. And there was a TES article that was released yesterday, and it starts by saying exclusive, and it says 8, and it's got a kind of massive triggering, a very triggering headline that I'm sure all of you have seen, and it says 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. extended school day on the table. What are people's thoughts? I've seen a whole bunch of stuff on Twitter. The quote tweets were actually quite hilarious, to be honest. So this article was written by Amy Gibbons, and it says the government said to be weighing up whether to opt for mandatory extra 30-minute extension or to fund a longer voluntary 8 till 6 school day. Let that sink in. Yes, voluntary, cool, but 8 till 6. Oh my word. What are people doing normally at 6 p.m.? I'm on my way home 6 p.m. Voluntary 8 till 6 school day. Crazy. So there are two approaches being kind of considered. This article has been told, and there's the government ministers are saying they're weighing up whether there should be a compulsory half-hour extension with an academic focus or a longer 8 till 6 p.m. day that would be voluntary. Listen, details of the plan. Apparently, much will depend on how much funding that 10 Downing Street can secure from the Treasury. And it's understood. This is my favorite bit. Well, one of my favorite bits. It's understood for the plan to be built around what they call the 3 T's of tutoring, teaching, and extra time. But they put the extra in brackets. So time is what they mean. But they've called it the 3 T's. This is what the government's kind of thinking to kind of get everyone to catch up. They've been talking about this catch-up thing for ages. And I used to really despise the term catch-up because I always felt that it just sent, it sent the wrong message to kids. And listen, we've had this been unprecedented years. We know that. And I tell you now, in my opinion, extending the school day from 8 till 6 p.m. is not the way to get kids to catch up. The things they've missed out on mostly are interactions, of course, enrichment activities, sports, seeing their friends, boosting their cultural capital is one thing I know young people have missed out on. And so their idea here, extending the school day, voluntary, schools I imagine can kind of opt in. And it's quite, just I find it very strange, if I'm honest. Let me know in the chat, what do you think about this whole thing, this 8 till 6 p.m.? The aim of this move, it says in the article, will be to clamp down on a small proportion of primaries that only open for half a day at a time. Someone let me know if there are primary schools that are open for half days. I don't know I'm not in the primary sector. I didn't know this was a thing. There are some primary schools, there are primary schools that open for half a day. Jenny's saying, no way, Jose. Is that in response to the primary schools open for half a day, or is this for the 8 till 6 p.m.? Would you want to work at 8 till 6 p.m. if it meant more pay? And if it meant, doing enrichment and more sociable activities rather than just being in the classroom, teaching them more academic subjects? Let me know in the chat. Would you do it for more pay? If they're going to pay you more and say, right, we need you guys. Here's your school saying, we're going to now get staff to work up until 6 p.m., but we're going to pay you for it. How much would you need to get paid first and foremost? Who knows? Put a figure on that. But would you do it from 8 till 6 p.m. if it meant you get more pay and maybe it's more about enrichment rather than additional learning activities, academic learning, I should say. And then I work, oh, I see. 8 to 6, no, I work that anyway. Just do the 9 to 3 job. I work in primary, right? Yeah, 8 to 6 is nonsense. I couldn't do it personally, but let me know if anyone could. So then we had someone called Sir Kevin or Kevin, I can't remember how to pronounce his name, to be honest, but this person has said that any plans to extend the school day should be compulsory in order to guarantee disadvantaged pupils attend. So he's basically saying there's no point having a voluntary extension of the school day. He's saying if you're going to do it, commit to it and make it compulsory. Because maybe he's saying that if you make it voluntary, then the people that, or the kids that we want to attend won't. So he's saying make it compulsory. And the catch-ups are, he's appeared before the House of Lords, and he said the more voluntary things are, the less likely they're going to get to the hard-to-reach bits of your community. Fair enough, I get that, but making it compulsory isn't this. The 8 till 6 is just going to bug me. The more I think about it, the more my head hurts. So again, we've got Jeff Barton, who's from the Association of School and College Leaders. He's a general secretary. He's not in favor of the compulsory half-an-hour option. He says, I do think there's an incredibly narrow view if they think that simply by creating extra academic provision for 30 minutes a day, that this is going to be the solution after the worst global pandemic we have seen in this century. That's what he's saying. He's saying that's a narrow view. Just giving kids an extra half an hour, that's not going to solve the issue. And I agree. I do agree. I think it's like a gesture to say when the government look back and people say, what did you do about it to make kids catch up? The government can kind of take a step back and say, well, we extended the school day. Right, we extended the school day. We did our bit. It's about teachers now teaching. Strange. I can't imagine it at all. Mr. Action Hero teacher Carl Poupé has said that kids will be too tired and will find it harder to learn. It'll be counterproductive. I agree. It will foster resentment, I think. Foster resentment, being kept in school till 6 p.m., even if it's down to kind of enrichment, more inverted commas, fun activities, could foster some resentment. So then Mr. Jeff Barton's gone on and he said it's not addressing, so this idea of an extra 30 minutes a day is not addressing the most important thing, which he says is the quality of teaching, quality of support, and quality of enrichment. Of course, that's the main thing. The way we're going to get kids to catch up is if we have very, very skilled teachers teaching them and making sure we rebuild the curriculum in a way that we can kind of plug the gaps. So I can speak from my own experience. Like I always use as an example, when we had the first lockdown, when we didn't really have remote learning going on, when kids returned in September, must have been, we reshuffled around the curriculum to plug the gap, to make sure that the topics that we would have done in, I don't know, those months from whenever it was, I'm out of the loop, I can't remember when lockdown even was, from March through to August, essentially, July, June, whenever it was, we plugged the gaps there and we reshuffled the curriculum. And then in terms of catching up, we tried to cover the most kind of salient topics in a short amount of time to try and get them caught up a little bit without falling too far behind. That was something that we did. And I think schools need to do that. Surely schools are doing that. Sure, it's a given, isn't it? If they've missed topics, I don't know, X, Y, Z because of lockdown, then surely when they came back in September, you would do topics X, Y, Z, maybe in a more condensed version, so that it doesn't take maybe as much time, but more condensed version. That's catching them up, academically speaking. What they've missed out on is all the social interactions, the enrichment, stuff that's going to boost their mental health, their self-esteem, all the issues they may have had in their home life. That's what kids have missed out on. So extending the school day till 6 p.m., in my opinion, unless it's really, really thought out in a way that's going to boost social interactions, isn't going to get kids to catch up academically. No kid, no adult wants to still teach and learn up until 6 p.m. No, sir, not for me. Not for me. So he goes on and he said, this is Mr. Jeff Barton, and he goes on to say, far better, he thinks, is to say to schools and colleges, look, we think it'll be good to be able to provide more quality time. And quality time, he goes on, is saying you have to look what that means in your context. Here's resources to do it, and you'll be held accountable for it, but you're the people who know best. So Jeff's saying that the government should provide some resources to schools and saying, we're going to equip you with maybe the resources to do it, but you as a school know what's best for your kids. And that is paramount. I agree. Every school is different. Every school is different. And the best people to know what their kids need in order to catch up are the people that lead the school. People that have been there, know the kids inside out. So Jeff Barton's saying we need to give the resources to the schools and say, right, you put things in place to make sure we can, inverted commas, catch kids up on quality time that they've missed. We'll hold you accountable to it, but you're the guys in control. That's what Jeff is saying. People entering the chat, thank you very much. Feel free to call in. There's only 5 minutes, actually no, 4 minutes left of the show. So if you want to call in, just share your views on what at the moment we're talking about this extended 8 till 6 p.m. Well, the talk of potentially extending the school till 8 till 6 p.m. or allowing teachers or schools to opt in to extend the school from 8 to 6 p.m. Let me know your thoughts on it. Up to now, today, if you've just tuned in, what you've missed at the start of the show, we spoke about the features of positive or good or not so good senior leadership teams, SLT. We then went on to talk about, what did we talk about? We talked about going back in time. We spoke about talking to your former NQT or ECT self. What advice would you have given yourself if you could go back in time and speak to them? Or speak to them, speak to yourself. Kind of a back to the future kind of vibe. What advice would you give yourself? So if that's a kind of topic that may interest you, listen back on catch up. You can go to ttradio.org/listen back, and you can listen back to this show if you're interested in either SLT or you're interested in advice for NQTs or ECTs. And towards the end of the show, we've just been talking about the kind of current affairs issue of this proposed voluntary 8 till 6 p.m. school day. And like I said, there's a whole bunch of kind of quite funny quote tweets. Someone is calling in just at this moment. Let me see if I can get them on the line. Those a dramatic pause when someone calls in. They tried to join, but may call in later. Didn't work out. Zuel209, feel free to call in again. Mr. Kex in the chat just at the end is saying, not sure how extending the school day helps with teacher well-being, which is currently a focus. Agreed. I'm going to say it doesn't. I don't think it does at all, if I'm honest. Extending the school day, requiring teachers to stay in the building up until 6 p.m. to then, I think someone said, well, when I would get home about 7:30, and by that point, my son will be in bed. So it doesn't really suit me, to be honest. Again, someone said, I'm looking at a quote tweet where someone said 8 till 6. They should try teaching maths in the PM instead of the AM, let alone trying to teach anything 8 hours into a school day. By 9 hours, I expect Lord of the Flies scenarios. That's someone I've seen on Twitter. So they're basically saying, I know this. The difference. Listen, Zuel, call in. It's your first day. Call in. Press that phone button. And I'll have a chat to you for the last minute or two on the airwaves. Feel free. So this person on Twitter, like I said, was making the comment that teaching maths in the afternoon is already much worse than teaching maths in the morning. I think that's the same with most subjects, let alone teaching something at 5 or 6 p.m. or 5 p.m. I dread to think what it could be like. And then someone else said, I read another quote tweet that says, we don't need this. It would punish students for something that isn't their fault. First of all, I would say keeping kids in school for longer, I would never say is a punishment. Personally, I wouldn't use the word punishment. But I would say it's definitely requiring them to do something, and it's a tax on them a little bit, but definitely not a punishment. Opportunity to learn and be around teachers sounds pretty positive. Oh, wow. Mitch Salty in the chat, just to finish off, has said, this week alone, we have had 2 RQTs resign. Younger staff are leaving, and it's so sad. It is sad. Teaching is a rigorous profession. And without the right support in place, teachers often leave the profession very, very early because they can't cope. Because if you haven't got the right support and you've got classes where maybe they're tough and challenging classes, it only leads you one way, and that's out the door, unfortunately. And it does take a lot of resilience in your first couple of years, especially in a more unsupportive school. to get through it. There are brighter days. There are better schools out there. If you're in a school, you don't feel supported, leave. There's my advice. If you're in a school and you don't feel supported and you just started, leave. That school is not a microcosm of the entire teaching profession. Yeah, there are some great schools out there who want to support their staff. So if you're just starting out and your school's not right for you, that doesn't mean teaching's not right for you. It means you just need to find a better school. And on that kind of positive note, it is 2:30. Thank you to everyone that stayed with me on this kind of long soliloquy. It was essentially, didn't have any scheduled callers. It was just me and you guys. So thank you for anyone that kind of commented in the chat, listened in, had it on in the background. It's all appreciated. If you just tuned in to listen back to TT Radios, listen back to the show, you need to head to ttradio.org/listen back. I have been Kalil Rouse. This has been the Sunday Lunch Show on Teachers Talk Radio, and I am signing out.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.
Thanks, guys. Adios.